A couple of weeks ago, I went out and bought my first new car, a Jeep Wrangler, and I was very excited about it. But then, about a week ago, the company that I work for, TFL Studios here, went out and bought this, the new Ford Bronco. Now here's the question. What are the pros and cons of each? And do I regret buying a Jeep Wrangler? Should I have waited for a Bronco? That's what we're going to find out today. Here's the background. This is my personal 2021 Jeep Wrangler Willys Sport. I've spent years saving up for this car, and it was a really big financial commitment. I paid $31,800 for it, with taxes $35,000. And this is the company Bronco. Like I said, we bought it a week ago. It was $63,000 with license and title fees and taxes. It came to $70,000, so twice as expensive as my Wrangler. Now you're probably thinking at this time, well, Tommy, if you knew that the company was going to buy a first edition Bronco in a four-door configuration, why didn't you buy a more apples-to-apples Wrangler? Because I couldn't afford it. I didn't want a car payment, and quite honestly, buying a new car for an MSRP of $33,000 just blew my mind in the first place, let alone a $70,000 Bronco. But the deal is, I've driven every configuration of the new Wrangler. I've driven a bunch of configurations of the Bronco. I've spent now over a week behind the wheel of this Bronco, driven it both on and off-road, thoroughly tested it, and well, should I regret buying a Wrangler over a Bronco? Let's dive into the pros and the cons of each. This Bronco video series is in support of the Ronald McDonald House, and this is a great charity that helps out families of children that are going through procedures, for example, at a hospital, and it's a really great organization. So if you want to help out a great cause, be sure to check out the fine folks at the Ronald McDonald House. The first pro of the Bronco, the magnificent seats compared to the Wrangler, specifically related to road trip ability. I'm so much more comfortable driving the Bronco than the Wrangler, primarily because I'm kind of a tall string bean dude. I'm 6'1", and I have a lot more room to spread out lengthwise in the Bronco than the Wrangler. Both 2- and 4-door Broncos, by the way. Plus, you can get the Bronco with lumbar support on both the driver and the passenger side. Plus, you can get power seats in the Bronco, and regardless of the trim, I strongly believe that the Ford has far superior seats. Let's check out the Wrangler to compare. Now, the first thing I do in a 2-door Wrangler, a 4-door Wrangler, or a Jeep Gladiator is get in and put the driver's seats all the way back. This is the only new car I've ever been in where I sit at the very end of the seat travel stop, which is a problem because I'm kind of tall, but really not all that tall compared to some. So put the seat all the way back, and the next issue you might notice is the shortness of the base cushion. I do not have enough thigh support in this Jeep to really be comfortable on trips longer than about 2 hours, and if I drive any Wrangler, regardless of the trim or the configuration, after about 2.5 hours, I start to feel some pain in the lower portion of my thigh, which is not really all that great. Plus, you can only get the Wrangler with lumbar support on the driver's side. Plus, there are no power seat options on the Jeep Wrangler. And I do have to say, I prefer the cloth interior to that of the leather, because the leather is even firmer, in my opinion, in terms of seat comfort. So overall, the Jeep has far worse seats than the new Bronco, regardless of the trim. Now, one major pro when it came to deciding between the Wrangler and the Bronco for me was the fact that you can get the Jeep in a 2-door configuration with the soft top. I could only afford the 2-door of both the Wrangler or the Bronco. I don't need the rear seat capabilities, and the soft top on this Jeep is awesome. I love being able to just flip it back, pull out the windows if I need to. It's a well-made top. I just drove this Jeep through a massive rainstorm for several hours. It didn't leak. It's easy to use. It's well assembled. If you want a 2-door Bronco, you can only get that in a hardtop, and that was a big deal for me. I like having this option. Now, I realize I am probably in the minority wanting that 2-door soft top configuration. I think a lot of folks are going to buy the Wrangler or Bronco in this configuration, 4 doors with the hardtop, and that is a pro of the Bronco. This modular hardtop is really very cool. So not only can you remove these front panels like you can on a Wrangler with Freedom Tops, but you can also simply remove this rear panel without getting the toolkit out, and that's a really cool thing, especially for rear passengers. Pull out that middle, It's kind of like a Targa top panel, and they've got a wide open area without actually removing the rear section. That's a pretty cool feature. As cool as this modular top is on the Ford, it actually brings me to a pro on the Jeep. That Wrangler has been around for 3 or so years, and most of the kinks have been worked out. This Bronco is a first-year production vehicle, and it was a concern of mine when deciding between the Ford and the Wrangler. Now actually we can see some of those production concerns up here on this top. This has been one of the biggest disappointments with this entire vehicle. The quality on this top, in my opinion, is very, very poor. This felty material is pulling up. It's starting to flake in several areas. The material itself is actually quite loose and does allow particles to enter the vehicle. And then if you look at the other side, for example, I mean, check this out. The glue is just leaking everywhere outside of this little rubber material. This top rattles constantly. I have thoroughly siliconed the joints. I have siliconed the seals, and it rattles and pops as you drive down the road constantly. Now, the fanboys are going to tell me that, well, this isn't Ford's fault because the hardtop on this vehicle is manufactured by a company called Webasto. The average consumer is not going to know that, and quite honestly, it doesn't matter because this is not a Ford Bronco by Webasto, this is a Ford Bronco. And these problems with the top do not exist on the Wrangler JL, at least from my experience and from the folks I've talked to. Now, from my initial quality assessment, I have to say, in my opinion, the Wrangler is a more sorted vehicle, and I like to talk to folks out on the trail. I've actually talked to a huge number of folks that own these Wrangler JLs, and pretty much everyone says that they have been very reliable for them. I know oftentimes Jeep has a reputation for unreliability, but it seems like, apart from maybe some of the earliest JLs, the Wrangler is a very sorted vehicle. I'm hoping the Bronco is too. I hope they fix the top issues really quickly. I hope that it turns out to be a super long-lived, dependable vehicle. But as of right now, we just don't know with that Ford. A pro of the Bronco over the Wrangler is the on-road driving experience with the caveat. Now, back in Texas, I had a chance to drive a four-door Bronco with the smaller tires. This one is the 35-inch tall tires. That one was closer to like a 33-inch tall tire. And I was amazed at its steering composure compared to the Jeep and how it handled bumps in the road at speed, specifically expansion joints around a turn. I felt that it was much more composed as it took those bumps while making a turn. It didn't get quite as unsettled as a Wrangler. Now the caveat is, if you step up to a Bronco with what they call the Sasquatch package, which gives you these really big tires, a lot of the advantage in the steering feel and the confidence in the suspension and ride is lost because you've got a bigger sidewall, more tire deflection, and of course, more unsprung weight. So, yeah, a Bronco on 35s still might drive better than a Wrangler on like 33s, but honestly not much better. It does now get a lot more upset over bumps, especially at speed, and that kind of precision steering that you got on the other Broncos is a little bit muted. Driving my Wrangler, well, first things first, the steering is a little bit what I would call guess and check. So you go ahead and you turn on in and then you realize, oh, not quite enough, so you add a little bit more, and then, oh, that's a little too much. So yeah, there is some lack of precision in the steering of the Wrangler, but quite honestly, I think most commenters have last driven a Wrangler in about 1988, powered by a 4-cylinder engine making 19 horsepower, strung up by leaf springs and Def Leppard playing out of one broken speaker on the sports bar, because honestly, the Wrangler nowadays is pretty refined. If you come out of a sports car, you're going to be, pretty disappointed, but if you come out of a normal car, yeah, sure, it's a little bit more top-heavy, and the steering is a little loose, and the suspension is a little bit maybe wobblier than you'd expect out of a Camry, but it's a safe and composed driving experience for the most part. And if you get one like this that is 1,400 pounds lighter than that Bronco, over 1,000 pounds lighter than that Bronco, I mean, I would argue that it drives better. It's more zippy in a lot of ways. I think that the suspension's a little bit more crisp than that four-door on 35s just because of the weight difference. And another good thing about the Wrangler is if you get the 3.6, it doesn't sound all that bad. at least compared to the 2.7 V6 in that Bronco. Now I think Ford is doing some pretty serious engine augmentation on the inside, changing the sound of it, because on the outside it sounds like a Cuisinart. Now the 3.6 isn't exactly a Lexus LFA V10, but when you get on it, especially above 5,000 RPM, it's got kind of a little bit of a roar to it. Honestly, I think one of the only engines that sounds worse than a modern day EcoBoost is the Wrangler 4-cylinder turbo, which, and I don't know what that sounds like. A whoosh of air is what that sounds like. But yeah, the V6 in the Jeep, it's a good engine. One major pro with the Ford, the headlights. Every version of the full-size Bronco comes standard with LED headlights. There's a couple of different designs, but they are all LEDs. The Jeep comes standard with these halogens, and these halogens are, well, they're glowworms wearing sunglasses. They are just not effective at night. I wish the Jeep came standard with the optional LEDs that you can get on this vehicle. One major pro of the Wrangler are the rear seat vents, which are standard, located here in the middle console, the center console. Now, I have a Bernese Mountain Dog puppy, and he is what I would describe as very heat sensitive, especially in the summer. This dog needs to be cool or he'll be very unhappy, and these are a big deal for him. He much prefers riding in the backseat of the Wrangler than the Bronco because of these vents. And as an animal lover, and of course as someone who may end up sitting in the backseat of either a 2 or 4-door, these are a really nice thing to have. Let's check out what the Bronco does. Now, regardless of 2 or 4-door Bronco, regardless of whether or not you spend over $60,000 like we did on this vehicle, you can't get rear seat air vents located in the console. Now, Ford's solution to this problem is actually locating vents down here underneath the seat, and actually this floor mat is warped a little bit and covers up the vents altogether. I'm not really sure that is a good enough solution to keep rear seat occupants and, of course, rear seat animals cool, because in the summer, if you've got AC going, cool air is going to fall. If you're already delivering the air on the ground, it just doesn't seem to do a good job of keeping back seat occupants all that cool. Now, my pro of the Wrangler is that the quality of materials and the fit and the finish on the inside are better than that of the Ford. Okay, the steering wheel in the Wrangler, this plastic one, not very good. But apart from that, I think Jeep has done a better job of including higher quality materials, even in a $33,000 vehicle, than a $63,000 Ford. So for example, the dash top feels to be a much higher quality of plastic. Moving down to the middle of the center console, this material by the shifter, much more finished than that of the Ford. And a big deal for me, I like to listen to music when driving along. The Jeep has a better audio system. Even the very basic Jeep system is better because the speakers are right above your head, and that's before you get to the upgraded Alpine unit. Now let's take a look at the Ford to compare. The interior fit and finish in the Bronco is not bad. I don't want to make this seem like it's a 20-year-old Ford Escort, but there are things in here that just aren't very nice. For example, like down here, this kind of coarse gray plastic almost looks pre-production in the center console. It doesn't really match anything else on the interior. This grab handle, for example, just a little bit flimsy. And of course, I'm going to get the comments saying, well, it's an off-roader, what do you expect? I kind of think that there is this perception going on online that high quality materials and 4x4 are two mutually exclusive things, but in my opinion, they should and can exist in the same vehicle. For example, look at a Land Cruiser from Australia, 70 series, very basic, but very well executed with fit and finish. Look at even like an FJ Cruiser, once again, not luxurious, but all the materials feel quite high quality. And then we come to the sound system in the Ford. Now this is the upgraded B&O system. You got speakers up here in the dash, but nothing in the doors because they come off. And the next speakers are all the way at the back behind the second row headrests. Not a big deal for some folks. It is a big deal for me, especially at $63K. I expect a better quality sound system. I look forward to see what people are going to do and upgrade that system, but it'll be interesting to see. Of course, the advantage of having the speakers back there is no crossbar on the sports bar here, so you get kind of a big wide open view, but it's just going to come down to what do you value in your vehicle. Now, size-wise, I think this is a pro for the Ford for most people. This is a much larger vehicle. Obviously, yeah, 4-door with 35s to 2-door on these smaller tires. But even apples to apples, if you look at the same configuration, the Bronco feels significantly bigger on both the inside and the outside. For example, when I was looking at the 2-door Wrangler, I looked at a 2-door Bronco, that is 7 inches longer. And that is a great thing for most people, but not necessarily for me. If it were up to me, every car would be like 40% smaller than it currently is. But I will say, the narrowness of this Jeep, the shortness of this Jeep makes it far more usable for my life out on the Colorado trails, which can be really, really narrow. It saves my paint from pinstriping, and my parking situation is really tight. And 7 inches of length is a big deal where I park, let alone going to that yellow Bronco. I tried to park that yellow Bronco at my spot at home, and I killed like 3 plants in the process of trying to make this turn. So the size thing I think is going to be an advantage for most in regards to the Ford, but for me, I like the compact nature of the Jeep. Now from an off-road standpoint, I'm going to give them a tie. I mean, folks are going to argue about this till the crows come home, but they both have their advantages. The Wrangler has that solid front axle, which is great for rock crawling. The Bronco has the independent front suspension, which is better for desert running, but both can be had with lockers and sway bar disconnects and skid plates and all sorts of cool options. I do like that the Ford can have a rear locker pretty much across the board, where you have to get a Rubicon to get lockers on the Wrangler, but apart from that, I'm going to call that a tie because they're both amazing. Now from an engine standpoint, well, I'm going to give that a tie as well. Here's why. So you can get the Bronco in the 2.3 turbo 4-cylinder or the 2.7 twin turbo V6. They're both EcoBoost engines. Both, I think, are quite potent. Both have plenty of power for an off-roader. Both are some of the worst sounding new engines money can buy. They sound like Dysons. Now, Jeep, on the other hand, has many, many more options, from this, the 3.6 liter V6, to the 2 liter turbo, to a V8, to a plug-in hybrid, to a diesel. So you've got a lot more options on the Jeep. They also have the pros and cons, certainly. My favorite engine of all the choices in all these vehicles is this engine, the 3.6 liter V6, because it's an off-roader and I want it to be as simple as humanly possible. So no turbos, no direct injection. On paper, this is a really dull engine. In person, it's a really good engine. So it's all about what you want for it. At altitude, the turbos in the Bronco are amazing, but from a simplicity, durability standpoint, in my opinion, 3.6 Pentastar V6, manual trans, go for that one. And from a transmission standpoint, you can get a 7-speed manual in the Bronco, which I love. I think it's really, really cool and it's really, really fun to drive. But actually, I like the 8-speed auto more than the 10-speed that Jeep offers. So manual trans, better in the Ford. Automatic trans, I think that 8-speed box they use in the Jeep is just a little bit more refined, a little bit better calibrated, and a little bit less hunty for gears. Now from a value standpoint, I think Ford offers more bang for your buck than Jeep. They both start, 28 some and change, within a few $100s of each other, but the Ford offers standard power windows. It offers a standard 8-inch screen. It offers standard air conditioning. So value-wise, I think the Ford wins. Now, I do like the manual windows and manual door locks in my Jeep, but that's just because I'm weird and I like simple things. To be honest, I still own a car that has a crank start on the front of it, so let's keep that in perspective here. But yeah, I think that the Ford offers more value dollar for dollar than the Wrangler. Now from a technology standpoint, I think it's pretty fair to say the Bronco wins, because the Bronco is a standard 8-inch screen. This is the standard screen in the Wrangler. It's like 9 postage stamps. But now, just to stir up the nest a little bit, I'm going to say that this is actually the single best radio available on the market in 2021. It's better than any Mercedes systems or BMW systems, and you know why? Because it just works. It does absolutely everything I needed to do and not a single thing more. It's got presets, it's got a volume knob, it's got a tune knob, and it has a button there for Bluetooth. They even threw in a compass. Get rid of the compass, I don't even need that. But it's just perfect. It's better than the 8.4-inch screen in the Jeep, it's better than the 7-inch screen in the Jeep, but that's just because I'm weird. For most folks, they're going to like the tech more in the Bronco, and that 12-inch screen in that Ford is amazing. It really does look great. Quite honestly, a big pro for the Jeep is you can actually go out and buy one. You can go out and order one and receive it before the next James Bond comes out, or maybe the one after that, because I placed an order for this Jeep in April. It took about 8 weeks to build, and then I've been cruising around in it this summer, and it's been awesome. Top off, enjoying the trails with my friends, taking Puppy Blaze out in it. And the fact of the matter is, to order one I could afford of this configuration back in April, if I wanted the Bronco, I think realistically it would have shown up in 2022, maybe even as a 2023 model year. And I've been very plugged in with the Bronco community, looking at the forums, looking at the way Ford has been communicating with folks that are committing to paying a huge amount of money for this product, and I wasn't going to put up with it. That's before dealer markets and the hassle of competing for a small number of vehicles. It just isn't worth it for me. Yes, there are things that are better on the Ford, but it's not better enough to wait a year and a half for it to show up. Jeep has built an excellent vehicle with this JL. I think it has proven itself to be very reliable, extremely capable. I like the size of it. I like the two-door soft top. So for me, I mean, that's really what won out, and I'm driving it. It's great. I love it. It's really fun. We're very lucky that we were able to get this first edition, but it took a lot of finagling of working with the Ronald McDonald house to actually make this vehicle happen and get it in a timely manner. And yeah, as a private buyer, I'm just not sure that I could accept the fact that it'd be a year wait from now. The Jeep is good. It's great. I love it. So I had no regrets. Let me know what you think in the comments section below of these two vehicles, which one you prefer, which one you own, and we'll see you guys next time on the next episode of The Fast Lane Car. I almost forgot, I have some exciting news actually. So I understand we have a lot of YouTube channels and it can be hard to keep up with what we're doing, and in fact sometimes I miss a few videos here and there as well. So we have gone ahead and started a really cool app, the TFL Studios app, linked below, and it's a great convenient source to see all the cool videos you want to see in one easy to find spot.